Along the shores of the North Azul Bay, at a small yet strategically significant town, elements of the Chupacabras defend against an attack on House Corbin and their allies. This is the Battle of Rutherford. Welcome to Rutherford in the demilitarized zone. This town's economy was centered around water extraction and purification. Recall that fresh water is the key export of Blue Hole. Places like this town is the reason why the Alyina Mercantile League is so interested in controlling this planet. The town and pumps are all silent now since most of the residents have fled the town when they heard the tall tale sign of mechs approaching in the distance. Rutherford is strategically important to both the League and House Corbin, since this town has a water crossing access to Cabolton City, the pseudo-capital of House Corbin. The Chupacabra's army composition is designed to fight multiple battles simultaneously, seeking tactical victories with an agile fighting force. Then, when the time is right, mass into an overwhelming fighting force. Therefore, the Chupacabra's 4th Battalion had deployed forces to defend both Hexawil and Rutherford. Unfortunately, the Battle of Hexawil demonstrated to the League that they may have underestimated House Corbin's capabilities. The Chupacabras won that battle, but only by the skin of their teeth. However, it is too late now for the Chupacabras to rethink their defense of Rutherford. The Chupacabra player knew that this was going to be a tough battle, but she thinks there might still be a chance, though she may have used up all her luck at the Battle of Hexawil. For the defense of Rutherford, the Chupacabras have deployed their 2nd Mech Company and their 3rd Combined Arms Company. They are supported by the Light Mechanized Infantry, as well as a Patreon unit, the Onion Lance. The 2nd Mech Company is comprised of a Caesar, a Vulture, a Guillotine, a Grizzly, a Wraith, an Assassin, a Javelin, Hermes II, a Loki, a Star Slayer, an Ostrak, and finally a Blackjack. The 3rd Combined Arms Company has a Lance of Pouncer Mechs, an Armored Lance with 2 Manticores and 2 Vedettes, and a wing of VTOLs that has 2 Balak Strikes and 2 Warrior VTOLs. Bravo Company is a light mechanized infantry company, which has 2 platoons of infantry. Each platoon has 1 Goblin infantry support vehicle that carries 3 squads of mechanized infantry. The company also has 1 armored support lance, comprised of 2 Galleon light tanks and 2 Skulker wheeled scout tanks. The Onion Lance is a Patreon unit, which is supporting the Chupacabra's defense of Rutherford. This is a mercenary heavy tank lance with a Shrek and 3 Chukov tanks. It is said that the Onion Lance has layers and makes you cry. Attacking Rutherford are elements of House Corbin's 2nd Regal Battalion of the 1st Regiment. Leading the attack is the Patreon unit, Solima Incorporated. This merc unit is a hodgepodge mix of disenfranchised clan warriors, former scientists, and members of the technician caste who have all given up on the clan value system and took advantage of the emptying of the Jade Falcon occupation zone. This group cleaned out a mix of stockpiles and old prototypes and hid out on their own. They are throwing their support behind House Corbin in hopes of proving their newfound loyalty to the almighty C-Bill and maybe get some publicity too. Although it is no secret that House Corbin's command staff have concerns about potentially deploying ex-clan warriors against clan warriors of the Alyina Mercantile League, needless to say, there are agents of House Corbin specifically tasked with keeping an eye on this mercenary unit. The mercenary unit has a Scout Lance, comprised of a Hunq, Black Lantern, Fire Falcon, and a Shadow Cat. The Striker Lance has a Thor, a Roken, a Linebacker, and a Battle Cobra. And finally, the Support Lance has 2 Nova Cats, a Night Shear, and a Kraken. House Corbin also deployed their standardized 2nd Mech Company, which has a Lance of Cougars, a Lance of Shadowhawk 2Cs, and a Lance of Riflemen 2Cs. Supporting this attack is Alpha Company Heavy Infantry. The company is comprised of 2 platoons of mechanized infantry, which has 2 deputy infantry fighting vehicles that each carry 1 squad of mechanized infantry. The company also has 1 platoon of Inner Sphere Battle Armor Infantry. And last but not least, the Patreon unit of Hanna's Hussars. This merc unit is secretly working for Loki, which is a super secret squirrel of a militant intelligence group sponsored by the Lyran Commonwealth. Hanna's Hussars were sent into the Hinterlands to monitor activities of various factions. Having found themselves close to Blue Hole, the Hussars decided to take a closer look and maybe make some extra sea bills. Both sides approached this lance for reinforcements, but Lieutenant Hannah Brune gladly accepted the title of Viscountess of Mortarbourne and joined House Corbin. The lance is comprised of a rifleman, an archer, a griffin, and a hunchback. Now, to better understand why the Chupacabra player had a bad feeling about this battle, let's have a look at the battlefield support assets committed to the defense of Rutherford. The League has committed one of their combat air patrols, a wing of Visigoths, to battle in the skies for air supremacy. The Chupacabra's 4th Battalion Artillery Battery was already providing fire missions to the Battle of Hexawil, and since these battles are happening simultaneously, the battery will not be able to provide fire missions in Rutherford. Now let's compare this to House Corbin's battlefield support assets. They too have committed a combat air patrol of one wing of Eagles to this attack. And unlike the Chupacabras, the 2nd Regal Battalion's artillery battery is available to provide fire missions for their attack. On top of that, the regimental HQ unit is within range, so its regimental artillery battery will provide fire support. And the air defense weapons of the HQ unit will also provide Aegis defense in the skies. And on top of all of that, this battle is within the Aegis defense weapons of Vasselvault Starport in the city of Cabolton. At this point, you may have guessed, the attack on Hexawil was a distraction. On the other hand, the attack on Rutherford, this is where House Corbin has put all their weight into. But before we get into the battle, I want to notify you all in a noticeable notifying notification of a new notable noble taking up the noteworthy noble cause of supporting the channel, and thus has been denoted as a notable noble of the channel. Thank you, Hackfish, for your noble support. You have our undying gratitude. This is a contested location, so the battle begins with the recon units of both armies meeting in an initial skirmish to try to claim momentum for their side, thus giving their army a few advantages for this battle. The Skirmishers will try to claim momentum points by being in proximity of the center control point, as well as scoring damage on the units of their opponent. House Corbin has selected their Shadowhawk Lance to act as their recon unit, and the Chupacabras have selected their Pouncer Lance to act as theirs. Since House Corbin is attacking, they have the initiative. The Chupacabra Pouncers will need to move and shoot first. The Pouncer Lance, beginning their movement at the top of the hill, use their jump jets to jump into the valley below and get in behind some woods, closing in on the town of Rutherford. House Corbin's Shadowhawk Lance activates, and these mechs are equipped with strong jump jets and are able to move up to 18 inches. The Lance jumps into the town of Rutherford, crushing someone's car and using the apartment buildings for cover. The Pouncers open fire, and due to all the jumping, the intervening woods, and the cover of the buildings, the Shadowhawk wasn't even hit once. Just the apartment building took some damage. The Shadowhawks returned fire, but the target number was astronomical, and they missed their target. For the second and final turn of the skirmish phase, the Chupacabras have the initiative. House Corbin will need to move and shoot first. The Shadowhawks ground move forward to the edge of the housing zone, solidifying their control over the control point. The Chupacabra Pouncer Lance activates and ground moves forward into cover of some intervening woods. This also puts all the mechs into the capture range of the control point. Now it comes down to shooting to see which side can claim the momentum for their side, and House Corbin will shoot first. The Shadowhawks split their fire between the red and blue Pouncer. Target number was an 8. The red Pouncer took 5 points of damage. This wiped out all of its armor and damaging one structure point, which then caused critical damage to one of its weapons. The blue Pouncer took 3 hits, but one of those hits was a critical, damaging its movement. The Chupacabras returned fire. The Pouncers also split their fire between the two Shadowhawks, sharing cover behind that apartment building. The target number was a 10, and using lucky points, one of the Shadowhawks took 5 points of damage. However, one of the hits was also a critical strike, causing damage to its fire control. The other mech fared much better. It only took 4 points of damage to its armor, but the apartment building was obliterated from all the shooting. This brings the skirmish phase to a close. House Corbin earned 12 momentum points for having 4 units in the capture zone, plus an additional 8 momentum points for dealing 8 damage. This gives House Corbin a grand total of 20 momentum points. The Chupacabra also earned 12 momentum points for proximity to the capture zone, but they earned 9 momentum points for damaging the units of their opponent, for a grand total of 21 momentum points. The Chupacabras just barely seized the momentum and therefore has deployment advantages and automatic initiative for turn 1. Since this is a contested town, the players, in addition to the center point, will designate one potential capture point. The Chupacabras chose this location and House Corbin chose that location. Remember, at the beginning of turn 2, the players will know which of these 3 capture points is designated as the key terrain for this battle. House Corbin deploys within 4 inches of their map's edge. After all of House Corbin's forces are deployed, the Chupacabras do the same, but may deploy up to 8 inches from the map's edge. With the forces now deployed, we start the Battle of Rutherford. The Chupacabras have initiative for turn 1 since they have seized the momentum. House Corbin will need to move and shoot first. At the beginning of each turn, both players' combat air patrols do battle in the skies above Rutherford. But House Corbin also has 2 overlapping Aegis defense systems in the region, and both locked onto 2 of the Chupacabras' Visigoths. One of the Visigoths was able to evade the attack, the other was instantly shot down. The combat air patrols begin to battle for air supremacy by rolling 2d6 for each side. House Corbin won the supremacy with a roll of a 10, but they don't have any dropships landing or taking off, so the players go straight into dogfighting. Since the difference between the 2 rolled results is a 2, then neither side will be able to provide airstrikes since 100% of their forces are locked into dogfighting, which in the end, 1 Visigoth took 1 damage and 1 Eagle took 2 damage. House Corbin also has Regimental Artillery Battery supporting this battle, but it first needs to be zeroed in on a target. Since it hasn't successfully completed its bracket fire, we go into the movement phase. House Corbin will move first. House Corbin activates his 2nd Mech Company. The Rifleman Lance jumps over the mansion and takes cover behind the woods bordering the harbor. The Shadowhawk Lance jumps and plunges themselves into the harbor. The harbor's depth is 1 inch, so it provides the unit with partial cover. The Cougar Lance ground moves to the edge of the town, and the SOP for House Corbin is that Cougars will carry battle armor into battle when available. Once the Cougars got into cover behind those buildings, the battle armor dismounted from the mechs. The Chupacabras activate their Onion Lance and cautiously advance the lance up the road. Their objective is to capture and hold this intersection, but the player is a bit wary of the 2 lances of X-Clan warriors deployed on the other end of the bridge. House Corbin activates Solima Incorporated. Seeing the tanks crest the hill, the Striker Lance hops down from the bridge and ground moves forward. The Scout Lance also ground moves along the southern bank of the river, closing in on the residential housing. The Support Lance ground moves behind the Cougar Lance in the town of Rutherford. The Chupacabra player activates her 2nd Mech Company. The mechs move down into the valley below, keeping as much of the sparse woods intervening between her mechs and House Corbin's. Next up are Hannah's Hussars, who shift their position around on the wooded hill. House Corbin player said he is keeping the Hussars in reserve, so to speak, until he knows which capture points will become the designated key terrain. The Chupacabras activate their 3rd Combined Arms Company. The Blue and Red Pouncer are in bad shape, so they jump back into cover while the rest of the Lance ground moves into cover of some trees. The Armor Lance ground moves up the hill. Unfortunately, the Vedettes didn't have enough movement to get up to the top of this hill for this turn. The VTOLs activate. The Warriors fly along the crest of the hill to bolster up the southern defense. The Balloks fly down over the harbor using the water extractor as cover. House Corbin activates the Mechanized Infantry. The battle armor cannot move since they dismounted this turn. The Deputies roll forward, the 1st platoon going to the mansion but not dismounting. And the 2nd platoon rolls in behind the Cougars, and the infantry also remain aboard their vehicles. The Chupacabras activate their infantry company. Realizing that this clump of trees is about to be heavily contested by Solima's Scout Lance, the mechanized infantry in column formation roll out. The player was very careful to ensure that the hill and woods remain between her infantry company and most of House Corbin's forces. Her so-called Chupa Goblins had to sprint to keep up with the armored escort. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase. House Corbin will shoot first. The Scout Lance opens fire on approaching mechanized infantry, focusing their fire on one of the Galleon tanks. The target number was an 8. The tank took 4 damage, wiping out its armor and dealing 1 structure point of damage. This caused critical damage to its movement, but the vehicle passed its motive checks. The linebacker unfortunately didn't have line of sight, but the rest of the Lance opened fire on the Loki at long range, but they failed to score a hit. Hannah's Hunchback was not within range, so he acted as the spotter for Solima's Support Lance that used their indirect fire to rain shells on the Loki. The target number was an 11, but between the Support Lance, they can dish out 19 points of damage. But this is an example of how multi-attack roll dice can be funny. The pilot die was a 1, and using lucky points, it was still a 1, so that means all the indirect fire miss. That is 1 lucky Loki. The rest of Hannah's Hussars opened fire on this lucky Loki with a target number of 10. Finally, the Rifleman and Archer hit, dealing a total of 2 damage to the mech's armor. The Cougars take aim at the Ostrach behind some trees. Target number is a 9. Using lucky points, the Cougar was able to hit, dealing 3 damage to the Ostrok's armor. The Riflemen and Shadowhawks split their fire, each lance shooting at one of the pouncers in the woods. And since the Shadowhawks are in deep water, they decide to overheat their weapons and let the soothing seawater cool their mechs. The target number was a 10. The Rifleman lance hit the green pouncer, dealing 5 damage, which removed all its armor and caused 1 structure damage with critical damage to its engine. The Shadowhawks scored 4 points on the purple pouncer, which completely removed the mech's armor. Determined to destroy the green pouncer, the battalion's artillery battery was called in and nailed the mech, destroying it, though the pouncer can shoot back this turn. At this point, House Corbin radios their regimental HQ and calls in for an adjust fire mission. Regimental artillery is a large area suppression attack, but it has to be zeroed first. The player calls the fire mission on the capture point C, but fails to zero on the first bracket fire. The player adjusts the number of tokens, marking that the artillery is not yet zeroed, but bracketing will steadily get closer until he can finally call in fire for effect. The Chupacabras can now return fire. The Galleon tanks and skulkers open fire on the Shadowcat. Target number was a 10, and the tanks had some amazing rolls, scoring 5 hits on the Shadowcat. But despite damaging the mech's structure, they were unable to inflict any critical damage. The Onion Lance and the 2 Manticore tanks fired at the Battle Cobra in the woods. The target number was an 11, but only the Shrek was able to hit, which scored 1 hit against the mech's armor. The Loki Lance also opened fire on the Cobra at the river's edge. The target number was an 11, and they all missed. Next up, the Red and Blue Pouncers opened fire on the Cougars in the town of Rutherford. Target number for Red is 9 and 11 for Blue since its fire control is damaged. Blue missed, but the Red Pouncer found its target, dealing 2 damage to the Cougar's armor. Next up, the Caesar Lance, the Down Pouncer, the Hermes 2, and the Javelin opened fire on one of the Shadowhawks in the sea. Target number ranged between 10 and 11, and they dealt 8 points of damage, which was enough to destroy the mech. The rest of the Chupacabra mechs and the 2 Balak VTOLs split their fire between the 2 severely damaged Shadowhawks. Unfortunately for the Chupacabras, only one of the mechs was hit, and the Balak VTOL only scored 1 damage, which took away the last point of the mech's armor. With shooting complete, this brings turn 1 to a close. Both sides lost 1 mech and exchanged a lot of ineffective fire. Players roll a d6 to see which capture point will remain as the key terrain identified to be captured. And like so many previous rolls from their shooting, it is a 1. Therefore, only the central control point will remain on the battlefield and is eligible to be captured. Now that the players know which capture point is the key terrain, the Chupacabras felt that their odds had improved. Her strategy called for her to advance the Onion Lance and the Chupagoblin infantry to the intersection and hold that hill. The rest of her mechs would hang back and cover and wait until turn 3, in which she would bum rush the center and try to hold on until the end of turn 4. House Corbin's battle plan was to have the 2nd Mech Company advance across the harbor and destroy the Chupacabras on the west side of the bay. Solima's company, the infantry, and Hannah's hussars would take Rutherford and defend the town center and southern approach. House Corbin considered to adjust their artillery barrage from here and shifted to here, but ultimately didn't because he wanted to have options if the Chupacabras somehow made a breakthrough in the center. Well, that's their plans. Let's see how this goes. But first, the players battle for the skies. Or not, because the Chupacabra player called off her air support assets. The player felt it was just too dangerous for the aerospace fighters to be exposed to so much air defense. This means House Corbin will have air superiority for the rest of the battle, and House Corbin immediately put the asset to use, calling on a heavy strike against that pesky Lucky Loki who dodged so much shooting from turn 1. The strike hit, dealing 6 damage to the Loki, which was enough to destroy the mech. That's a bummer to lose a mech like that, but that's air power. House Corbin won the initiative for turn 2. The Chupacabras will need to move and shoot first. The Chupacabras activate the Onion Lance and tanks advance up the road, closing in on their assigned objective of controlling the intersection. House Corbin activates his 2nd Mech Company. The Shadowhawks are in bad shape, so the Lance moves back, but not far back that they cannot be part of the assault across the bay. They also do a circle the wagons formation, I guess to dissuade the Balak VTOLs from harassing the Shadowhawk Lance. The Rifleman Lance jumps into the Rutherford Harbor, at the previous position of the Shadowhawks, and the Cougar Lance leaves their position in the town of Rutherford and ground move into the bay as well. The Chupacabras activate their 2nd Mech Company, and the mechs ground move into various positions of cover throughout the valley. As clear as day, the Chupacabra player can see the attack is coming to their side of the bay. She realizes this position puts her mech company in danger of an artillery barrage, but she doesn't plan to keep her company in that position for very long. House Corbin activates his infantry company. The 2nd Mechanized Infantry Platoon stands still, and the battle armor infantry advances into the empty streets of Rutherford, using the buildings to break line of sight with the Chupacabra forces. The Chupacabras activate their 3rd Combined Arms Company. The Purple Pouncer falls back, taking cover with the Caesar and Grizzly. The rest of the Pouncers take the hull down action, tucking themselves in behind the trees even more. The Armor Lance advances along the ridge. The Vedettes lost most of their movement climbing up the hill. The Warrior VTOLs hover just above the tanks, and the Ballad VTOLs see an opportunity to engage 1st Platoon's infantry who are still aboard their deputy fighting vehicles. Solomon Incorporated is activated by House Corbin player. The Night Cheer and one of the Nova Cats were tasked with pulling back to deal with the Ballad VTOLs. The other Nova Cat and the Kraken moved in to cover. The Striker Lance crosses the river and takes up cover at the facility and behind some woods. The Scout Lance, ignoring the jeers and taunts of the Chupa Goblin Infantry Company, climbs over the bridge and takes cover behind the Striker Lance. The Chupacabras activate their last unit, the Infantry Company. The Armored Escort climbs the hill, taking cover behind some trees. The Chupa Goblin Infantry Platoon stays at the bottom of the hill to break line of sight, while also getting into cover of the woods. House Corbin activates the Hussars, who ground move from the Woodland Hill toward the Aqua Rutherford plant. They want to get into position to join the assault on the map's center over the next few turns. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase. The Chupacabras will shoot first. The Onion Lance and the Chupacabras tanks in the south, the 2 Warrior VTOLs, and the 2 Swiss Cheese Pouncers split their fire between Solomon's Thor and the Linebacker, with target numbers ranging between 9 and 11. The Thor took 10 damage, which was enough to destroy the mech. The Linebacker was more successful at dodging incoming fire and took 4 points of damage to its armor. One of the Onion Lance's Chukovs also scored a critical hit, dealing 1 more damage to the mech's armor, which critically damaged the mech's weapons. The Balak Strike VTOLs had a difficult choice to make. Do they try to take out one of the deputies carrying the mechanized infantry, or try to put some damage on the Nova Cat? In the end, the Balaks engaged the Nova Cat. Target number was a 5 and a 7, since one of the VTOLs was at medium range. They hit, dealing a total of 4 damage to the mech's armor. The 2nd Mech Company was up next. Each lance of the company took aim at 1 rifleman each and opened fire. And the Loki Lance hit, dealing 4 damage to the rifleman's armor. The Caesar Lance took 7 damage off another rifleman, but at least one of its hits was a critical, destroying one of the rifleman's weapons. And finally the Wraith Lance, who all missed, with the exception of the Hermes 2, which hit with every shot, dealing 3 damage to the mech's armor. House Corbin can now return fire. The Night Cheer and Nova Cat each take aim at 2 of the Balak Strike VTOLs, and both were shot down. The 2nd Mech Company, with supporting fire from Solomon's support lance, take aim at the Vulture, and that was a lot of shots poured into that mech, and it was destroyed. House Corbin's mechs in the south, which was mainly comprised of Hussars and Solomon's mechs, divided their fire amongst the tanks on the hill. 1 Manticore and 2 of the Jukovs were destroyed. The other Chukov took 3 points of damage to its armor, but did not sustain any motive damage. House Corbin then calls artillery on the severely damaged Red Pouncer, but it misses the target. House Corbin's regimental battery continues to adjust fire, but still failed to 0, but the artillery is getting closer. And that brings shooting to a close. That turn's shooting was devastating for the Chupacabras. They lost a mech to an airstrike, then lost another mech, 3 tanks, and 2 VTOLs from enemy shooting. And House Corbin took a lot of damage, but didn't lose a single mech or vehicle. Let's get into turn 3. At the top of turn 3, the player with the momentum, that's the Chupacabra player, can choose which turn the battle will end. She believes she has 0% chance of winning this battle, so she chooses for the battle to end on turn 4, which is the earliest that the battle could end. House Corbin still had air superiority, so he directed his airstrike against the Ostrak. With another heavy strike, the Eagle dealt the Ostrak 3 damage. This took the last 2 points of its armor and dealt 1 structure damage, which also caused critical damage to its engine. The Chupacabras won the initiative, so House Corbin will move and shoot first. House Corbin activates their heavy infantry company. 2 mechanized infantry platoons again stand still. However, the battle armor infantry advances up the streets, taking cover behind buildings, ready to assault the key terrain. The Chupacabras activate their 3rd Combined Arms Company. The Purple Pouncer jumps to the top of the hill. The other Pouncers remain in their hold-down positions. The tanks and the VTOLs of the company collapse back into cover of the woods, with the VTOLs hovering nearby. House Corbin activates Hannah's Hussars, and the mechs move into the main street of Rutherford, taking cover behind the apartment buildings, closing in on the key terrain. The Chupacabra player activates her second mech company and orders her forces to fall back. The Hermes 2 and Javelin jump to the top of the hill, while the rest of the company ground moves, collapsing back to the Limestead Highway. Sensing an imminent victory, House Corbin orders his second mech company to seize the western shore of Rutherford Bay. The Rifleman Lance and Shadowhawk Lance jump onto the shore, pressuring the Chupacabra's northern flank. The Cougar Lance, however, stands still. To be honest, I'm not sure why the player did that, but I guess he had his reasons that he just did not want to divulge. The Chupacabras activate the Onion Lance. The tanks pull back, taking cover behind the road sign with their sights on the Griffin in downtown Rutherford. House Corbin activates Solima Incorporated. The support Lance does a general advance, reforming on the Harbor Highway. And it looks like the Nova Cat decided to kick over the wall. Looks like Solima is picking up some bad habits from House Corbin. Just kidding, I'm sure it was totally an accident. The rest of Solima advances across the river, closing in on the Chupacabra's position. For a few minutes, the Chupacabra player considered having her infantry company attempt to flank Solima's Scout and Striker Lance, but she decided it wasn't worth the risk. The battle was lost, so she wanted to preserve her units for another battle. The damaged Galleon tank limped into cover of that house. The rest of the escort tanks ground moved to the other side of the trees, taking aim at the approaching forces of House Corbin. And the Chupagoblin infantry platoons sprinted back into cover, run away to fight another day. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase. House Corbin will shoot first. The attack force all opened fire, with the Solima Striker and Scout Lance targeting the Star Slayer with a target number of 9, and the mech was hit with 13 damage, which was enough to destroy the mech. Next up, Hannah's Hussars, Solima's Support Lance, and the Battle Armor all opened fire on the Guillotine with a target number of 9. Hannah's Archer didn't miss with a single one of its weapons, and the barrage hit the Guillotine with 11 points of damage. This wiped out all of its armor and did 4 structure damage, and the Guillotine suffered 1 critical damage to its weapons. And finally, 2nd Mech Company opens fire on the Wraith and the Assassin. Target numbers for both mechs was 10. The Assassin took 12 points of damage and it was destroyed. The Wraith, on the other hand, took 4 points of damage to its armor. Still trying to finish off the Red Pouncer, the artillery was called down and this time it struck, taking out the mech. House Corbin opted to not zero his regimental artillery because his units were closing in and he did not want to risk a danger close fire mission and hit his own mechs. So I guess we won't be seeing any regimental artillery barrages in this battle. Sad face. The Chupacabras returned fire. The Onion Lance, the 2 VTOL warriors, and the tanks of the infantry company, as well as the 3rd combined arms, all take aim at the linebacker with a target number of 9 and 11, and they were able to inflict 6 points of damage, which was enough to destroy the mech. The rest of the Chupacabras opened fire on the 2 heavily damaged rifleman mechs. The target numbers ranged between 10 and 12. In the end, the Chupacabras took 1 rifleman out and dealt 5 more damage to the other, removing the last of its armor and scoring 2 structural damage, with critical damage to the mech's engine. And that brings shooting to a close. The Chupacabras lost 3 mechs and House Corbin lost another 2. But a lot of mechs on both sides are heavily damaged. The Chupacabras just cannot take out House Corbin's mechs fast enough, and House Corbin's air superiority is just picking them off one by one. At the end of this turn, the battle will come to a close, and the army with the most tactical points will win the battle. House Corbin was still unopposed in the skies. He directs an airstrike against the Chupacabra's Guillotine and nails it with 4 damage, which was enough to destroy the mech. It seems uncontested air support is quite deadly. At this point, the battle became a game of maneuvers, with House Corbin confident that he was victorious, but still cautious in order to prevent any unnecessary losses. The Chupacabras, on the other hand, did a combination of jump and sprint actions to escape the battlefield. Ultimately, the only units left on the battlefield was the Blackjack of the 2nd Mech Company, who could not sprint fast enough to get off the battlefield. The remnants of the Onion Lance stayed behind in order to cover the Blackjack's retreat. How noble of them. House Corbin didn't have line of sight, so it resorted to using indirect fire attacks from Solima Incorporated and the battalion's artillery battery. But ultimately, every single shot missed. Since House Corbin didn't have any forces close enough to the Chupacabra's last remaining forces, the remnants of the Onion Lance and the Blackjack were able to escape the battle at the end of turn 4. House Corbin was victorious. Rutherford and its strategic water crossing into Cabolton is now completely under the control of House Corbin's forces. The Chupacabras lost 7 mechs and 4 vehicles, as well as 1 combat aircraft. House Corbin lost 4 mechs and none of their vehicles. This also brings strategic turn 1 to a close, and in the next episode, we will see the fallout of these battles, as well as cover the actions of the second strategic turn. I hope you enjoyed this battle report. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next battle.